a wife, a husband, 2 kids, and a high schooler. This is the story of a love triangle that took a deadly turn. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name's Francesca, and every week I'm here with a new true crime story. If you're obsessed with true crime like me, then I recommend you subscribe because I'm here for you every week. Our drink of choice today is a matcha latte, so it's time to sip and dip into some true crime. Hazelnut. Livye Lewis was a 19-year-old girl from Sabine County, Texas, and she was described to be this ray of sunshine. She had one of those laughs that are so big and unforgettable. She would walk into a room and could make anyone smile. She had these big hopes and aspirations for her future. She wanted to become a nurse and then a physician's assistant. So before this, she had to gain some experience. So she became certified as a nursing assistant, and she worked at a local nursing home. And she was really good at it. The residents loved her. She loved them. She really just cared for people, and she was really good at it. During her time there, one of her coworkers became one of her good friends. Her name was Taylor, and Taylor was definitely older than Livy. She even had a daughter of her own, but Livy was just one of those people that you could get along with, and so they became really close. Taylor at the time was dating somebody who was friends with a person who will become really important. His name is Matthew Edgar. Matthew was 23 years old at the time and started talking to Livy, who at this time was still in high school. So that's good. And to make things even worse, Matthew was married and had not 1, but 2 kids with a woman named Montana, who will also become very important to the story later on. In 2019, Livy was still in high school, focusing on her studies, when Matthew and her started to get to know each other more. They started texting, going out, and it kind of became a secret relationship. I want to make it so clear that in this type of relationship, the adult is always to blame. There's always like an abuse of power when it comes to somebody who's really young, and for me, it's taking advantage of the situation and how young and how undeveloped this person is. Matthew even knew that this was wrong to do because there was a text that he sent to Livy in November 2019 saying, "You do realize you cannot say a word to anybody that we are even texting, LOL." I'm not too sure what's funny about it, but anyways. And even though Livy was the younger one in the relationship, she had a great head on her shoulders, and she ended things with Matthew. She just didn't want to have to do anything with ruining his married life and his home. This was not the last time she heard or Matthew will be mentioned in this story. So Matthew reached back out to Livy and complained about his marriage and how it wasn't working and that he would cheat on his wife. She was like, "Okay, great. I don't want anything to do with that." She essentially said that she didn't want to be a homewrecker. So a bit of time later, Matthew's wife officially wants a divorce from him since he would constantly cheat on his wife and she would know about it. It was never a one-time thing. And I think he would even tell her that he was cheating on her. He was just very unhappy in this marriage. He just wanted to get out, essentially. The wife, Montana, ends up telling him, "I'm going to get a divorce." So they're going through this process of separating and getting a divorce. That's when Matthew reaches back out to Livy once again and tells him the situation, that he's essentially not with Montana anymore and he's a single free man. Livy was like, "You know what? I think I can give this a shot." And they end up getting back together. This time, not so secret. So what's really weird about this situation is that Montana ends up befriending Livy. And prior to this, she did not care for Livy. She wanted nothing to do with her. And then all of a sudden, they're best of buddies. They're always talking. They seem really close. From what it looks like, Livy did consider Montana a friend, whereas people say that Montana had ulterior motives and it was sort of a jealousy thing with Livy. I don't know. To me, it's weird. I don't think I would befriend somebody who is with my husband. They weren't even divorced really at this point they were growing through it. So, but moving on. During Matt and Livye's relationship, there were a bunch of phone records that showed Matthew was not a great boyfriend. Are we surprised? Not really. I'm not. You're not. Friends said that Matthew would constantly raise his voice at Livye, and he would drink a lot and get super agitated, super aggressive, and there's even messages that indicate that he even put his hands on Livye and got physically violent with her. Livye graduates high school in 2020 as valedictorian, and her next steps were to go to college for nursing. She originally had planned to move into the college. She wanted to live on campus, but that summer she agreed to stay with Matthew and help take care of his 2 sons. She was such a great person. She even helped redecorate the sons' bedrooms. Well, they're living together and it just seems to be getting worse. There are messages between the two that show his drinking problem was really getting to Livye. There are messages between them where she says, "I want to be in our home with you, but I can't do the way you act when you drink. I'm scared of you. You've laid your hands on me multiple times. I deserve better than them." There weren't any reports made of domestic violence. There was even a photo that Livye sent to one of her, I believe it was her cousin, where she had a broken nose. And this was from an argument that, get this, Livye finds out that Matthew is cheating on her with Montana. Boom. So to make it really clear, Matthew is married to Montana, has 2 sons. He divorces Montana, gets with Livye, and then cheats on Livye with Montana. So that's great. Livye, being the smart girl that she is, has had enough with Matthew and ended things with him. This is when everything takes a turn. So in October of 2020, Livye ends up going to a Halloween party. Her friend was hosting a Halloween party. It was about 20 or so people. She goes to the party with Montana. I'm not exactly sure what the relationship was with Montana and Livye after she finds out that Matthew was cheating on her with Montana. Maybe that relationship ended with Montana and Matthew, and maybe that's why Livye was okay going to the party with her. I'm not exactly sure why she went with Montana, but that's what happened. So I'm not going to place judgment. I'm just going to tell you the story and I'm going to tell you the facts. So I'm guessing Livye and Matthew had like similar friends. So Matthew also goes to this Halloween party. Montana and Livye are kind of doing their own thing at this party. They see Matthew. He's attempted to come up and talk to them, but they don't give him the time of day. They're just like focusing on themselves. They don't want anything to do with him. Matthew sees Livye talking to a guy at the party. And he had been drinking and got really drunk and got really aggressive. There's a pattern here with this boy. He sees Livye, gets enraged, and then there's an argument between the two. It's a heated argument. Livye ends up wanting to leave. So Livye and Montana leave the party, and Matthew ends up chasing after both of them. They are sitting in Livye's car when Matthew comes around and starts kicking and punching the doors of the car. I'm going to insert a picture because you can tell the rage that he had and the aggression that he had. There's dents in this car. The host of the party comes out and attempts to stab Matthew. So he pins Matthew up against the car for Livye and Montana to escape. The girls go in separate cars. Livye goes in her car, Montana goes in her car. From what we know from Montana, this is her side of the story. She goes to Matthew's house and he ends up following Montana and ends up choking her. What gets him even angrier is that on Montana's phone you can see messages between her and Livye saying that she was going to stay with another man. This got him so angry to the point where he takes a rifle and says he's going to look for Livye. He's essentially hunting her. So after some time, Montana gets a text from Matthew saying that he has Livye's keys and phone. Montana asks him, "Where is she?" And he says, "Dead." So we're going to fast forward a little bit and I'm going to give you this scene of the crime. At 5 a.m., somebody drives by and sees Livye's car on the side of the road. She's toppled over on the steering wheel and she's unconscious. Passerby calls 911, the police get to the scene, and Livye had been shot in the neck with a rifle. We see the rifle in the grass. We see Matthew in a fetal position behind Livye's car. They take Matthew to the hospital. He's unconscious and he's drunk. They take him to the hospital and he wakes up and doesn't know what's going on, or he says he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know what happened. The police are questioning him and ask him where he was or what he last remembers.
I have no clue what happened.
No clue.
None.
You have a girlfriend?
Kinda. I had an ex-girlfriend named Livye.
He says that he last remembers being at the party. The police officer asks him, do you have a girlfriend? He says, yeah, kind of, ex-girlfriend. Her name is Livye. They also ask about his ex-wife, Montana, and he describes the two as big buddies. The police don't believe him. Once they tell him that Livye is dead, he begins this forced fake cry that not even I believe. Matthew had blood splattered on his forehead. So the police say, we're going to take a DNA sample of this blood. They swab him, they test it, and then they go back into the room and they say, we're going to arrest you.
Charge is going to be homicide. All right?
So now we're going to backtrack a little bit. At 7:30, Livye's mom was called to the scene, and you can just see her pain and her worry and her face. She's asking the police where her daughter is, and that's when she finds out that her daughter has passed away. Montana in this case was questioned. Since she didn't go to the police, she didn't call 911, she didn't do any of those things, she was questioned. She was taken to a polygraph test, and she actually failed the test. But since there was no other evidence that she had anything to do with the crime, she wasn't arrested, and she was essentially not considered a suspect anymore. This was in 2020, so COVID. The courts and the trials and everything, they're a little bit messed up. They're a little bit funky. I think things that normally wouldn't have happened before COVID were happening. And Matthew has a bond set for $50,000. He pays it. So even though he's free, a jury indicted him for the murder of Livye Lewis. He went to the trial for 2 days. And it's crazy seeing it because he's walking in and out just like a free man. No police by him, nothing. They made him wear even a bulletproof vest. On the third day of his trial, Matthew runs. So he had to wear an ankle monitor when he was on bail. He let the ankle monitor battery die. He takes a gun and he makes a run for it. Now police are looking for him. Everyone's looking for him. Livye's mom, Darcy, begins helping the police look for Matthew. Even though Matthew is nowhere to be found, his trial continues. This is honestly really funny to me because it's really funny to have a trial without the person there. They're just okay. Police keep looking for Matthew. His trial continues, and they eventually find Matthew guilty. But they can't sentence him yet because he's not physically there. The police get a tip saying that Matthew is out and about, but he's near Matthew's friend's house that was in a woods, very isolated, perfect for a fugitive to stake out. The police get to this house and they conduct a stakeout. What's crazy about this is that when they were there, there was a huge storm. So this was like a scene out of a movie. It's dark, it's stormy, they can't see anything, and they're looking for this fugitive. Finally, Matthew steps out on the porch and they're able to see some light on his face. They know it's him. They get out, they go arrest him. He was being snarky. He said something like, "Oh, they couldn't prove me not guilty," to the police officer. He was like, "No, Matthew, no. You're going to jail." And what's even funnier, the police know that his mom's in there too. His mother, Cindy, was in the house with Matthew, and she comes out and she's like, "I didn't know he was here. I didn't know anything. I don't know what's going on." And this is the same woman who tried to get the case off of her son when they were arresting him and the story came out by saying that Livye was killed by a drug cartel because she was involved in that type of business. So they have just no respect. This family is all types of messed up. There was just really no sympathy for Livye from that family. They take Matthew to jail, and finally, in 2023, Matthew Edgar was sentenced for the murder of Livye Lewis. He was given 99 years in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 30. There are a lot of turns in this case, and I think there were a lot of signs that showed how awful Matthew was as a person. It's time for my thoughts. I think, personally, Montana had something to do with this crime. She wasn't charged with anything, but it's just very odd to me that this was a girl that normally you wouldn't love to have around in this situation, being that Livye was the girlfriend of her ex-husband. She was also there at the crime scene, and then she was also getting texts from Matthew, and she didn't do anything about it. So for me, she's guilty of that. And also she knew that Matthew was going to find Livye with the rifle. In what world you don't call the police for something like that? I don't know. I think Matthew is just an awful human being. I'm glad that he finally got charged. It's crazy that he just escaped. And they need to make those ankle monitors no battery. They need to make them to last forever. I hope you guys liked learning about this story. I'm always open for new cases. Let me know in the comments what you want to hear, and I will see you guys in my next video.